Hey Axis and Allies players, a good captain here. Welcome to part 2 of round 1 in this game of East and West that I'm playing against a human opponent. So just to tee up off the last video and to jump right into it, I made a placement adjustment. So I have a total of 7 Western European infantry in France and 9 in Italy. Otherwise, we're good to go for UK turn 1. So the purchase is going to be, again, 1 spy. This will be a theme for all the NATO powers on the first turn, which turns their 33 to 23. And I normally have a set build for this turn, but I'm a little nervous about these naval battles I'm about to engage in, so we're going to forego that, and instead we're going to buy 3, 4, 5, 6 infantry. That's 18. Leaving us 5 IPCs, and I don't have any purpose for this. And contrary to what I see most people, most Axis and Allies players do. I really am not a fan of spending all the money. I think it makes your following turn far less flexible. So if it's not going to actively support you on the turn you're playing in, then I don't know why. I don't understand where that came from, to be frank. Um, Especially with the UK, there's no productive place I could see on the board where adding more pieces would do anything with, or 5 IPCs worth of pieces, right? We're talking about a tank or an infantry at this point, so no, we're good. We'll make the next turn a more flexible purchase by rolling it over. Okay, continuing. For the combat move, I have 2 combats. The first and probably the most important, most consequential at least, is this movement against the Russian Navy off of Iceland, USSR Navy off of Iceland. We're going to commit the entire Royal Navy. 1 sub, 1 battleship, and a cruiser. And actually, I'm going to have the cruiser go into the sea zone off of Quebec and then up to Iceland. This is a 3D chess level move that allows for the opportunity to retreat to an alternate sea zone. So just this is something across all versions of Axis and Allies. When and where you can, you should always do this. It doesn't ever hurt. It can only help, even though if it might not help all the time. Having more options is always a good thing. Always, always, always. You want to over-option yourself as much as possible in case we have to make unhappy decisions. This transport, I debated bringing him in, but the answer is no, again, because of the peculiar rules around submarines. Defending subs can retreat to vacant sea zones, so him being there actually restricts the options of my opponent if the submarines are not destroyed in the first round of combat. We're also going to commit the entire RAF, both the bomber and fighter off of England and the bomber in France. So, when all is said and done, this is 19 pips. So, most of the time we'll pick up 3 hits. At least that's the design of the attack. Of course, we're hoping for at least 2. But we'll see. We have to see what happens. But he can only submerge or retreat to the Hudson Bay Sea Zone because that U.S. sub survived and retreated to the Irish Sea Zone. So you can kind of see the complexities of submarine combat in Classic. I think it's actually a bit more robust than even that in Global or Anniversary. But moving on. My other attack is out of India, so the Soviets took Pakistan, and we really need to take this back. So sending 2 and an armor against Pakistan is a 97% chance of recapture, so I'm comfortable placing that bet. Even if we retreat just the armor, It's still at 97, believe it or not. So we're in a very good position to recapture this territory with 2 inf and 1 armor. And that's it for combat moves. Let's go ahead and roll some dice. We'll start with Pakistan. Okay, we have a 65% chance of picking this up on the first round. But we're geared to go for a second round if needed. So here goes. The armor picks up the hit, so we fell inside that 65%, good enough. And now the Russians roll back. So we roll this 1 die, and they miss. So on the strategic map, we remove the infantry, remove the roundel, and adjust the IPC tracker. Down 1 for the Soviets, and back up to 33 for the United Kingdom. Moving on. Okay, we have a submarine up here in the Iceland Sea Zone battle that's attacking. So we open with round 1A in the Iceland Sea Zone battle, 1 UK sub surprise strike. Here we are. Let's go ahead and roll it, see if the UK sub picks it up, and no. So we go for this round 1B, I should say. We have a cruiser, a fighter, and a battleship and 2 bombers. So that by itself more than likely should still pick up 3 kills, although it's going to be close. 3 hits. There it is. The bomber, the battleship. Both the bombers and the battleship hit. The fighter and the cruiser miss. So that's it. That's basically the Soviets will shoot back and we're done. Yeah, so the Soviets roll with 2 subs and a cruiser. So USSR defends Iceland Sea Zone, 2 subs, 1 cruiser rolling. All misses. That was a so that Black Sea fight and this Iceland Sea Zone fight went immaculately for NATO, and in both cases they should have lost 1 boat. Or in this case, I guess the hit would have gone to the battleship. But yeah, that's frustrating for... okay, well, the game is still young. Let's continue. Okay, for the non-combat move, it's fairly elaborate. Let's just blast through these, though. This infantry in Ontario moves to Quebec. This transport moves to the sea zone off of Iceland, and then into the sea zone off of Ireland after picking up the 2 British infantry in Iceland and then dropping them off in France. The RAF returns to, or moves to France. That was at least the part that was engaged in the battle. There's a British fighter on this carrier. He's going to jump off and head down to Sudan for 4. I like Sudan because you can project a little bit of dead zone power into Pakistan, and it can also head back to Italy or France in 1 turn. It's not needed for defending the sea zone off of Italy there. This transport moves 1, 2. And in conjunction with this move, this infantry in Libya moves 1. So on the next turn, we're going to pick up these 2 wayward infantries and bring them into the Ireland Sea Zone here. Okay, so those all look good. And then moving east, we're going to move this armor back into India. We're going to move this infantry from Burma into India. The Aussies are going to reinforce first with this fighter. 1, 2, 3, 4. You can see there's a theme here. We're going to stockpile India. These 2 infantry load up on this transport, and this entire fleet moves to the India Sea Zone and drops off their infantry. The transport that was already in the India Sea Zone is just going to single shuck this infantry off of Singapore. Yep. Actually, after looking at this for a moment, I think that Australian fighter is going to land in Indochina. Yeah, that's right, because I don't know if that's that interesting, but yeah, I think we'll just do it. This bomber is an extremely valuable piece to the Soviets, but bombers in this game can also double as air transports for paratroopers, and so Indochina is technically a territory that can be invaded, or at least taken over by that potential paratrooper in Manchuria. And I just noticed that. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, so I think this is the only piece now. I should have left an infantry behind from the West Europeans, but this should do the trick. The Soviets really don't want to lose that bomber, so going head up against a fighter is extraordinarily risky, if not foolhardy. So, yeah, we'll continue. This cruiser, there's a cruiser south of Africa, so we just move him here. The South African army moves the armor here from South Africa to Congo, and these infantry move into Mozambique. So, I think that's it. Yeah, so let's go ahead and do the placement, and I'll just sort of review the overall strategy thus far, and then we'll head into the USA's turn. Okay, with these 6 infantry, we're going to drop 3 in India. This will all be pretty obvious what's going on here. We can drop 1 in Burma, and then these final 2 will go in Singapore, ready for another single shuck from one of those transports on the following turn. And then of course we place the spy down in the spy box. We're going to go ahead and collect our income, 33, to add to the 5 that we saved for 38 next turn. Okay, that's it for UK, and now I'm going to very briefly go over the overall strategy for the NATO. At this point, we've been targeting USSR naval units, and we're going to continue to do so until we hoover them all up. We'll be doing the same thing with the USA here shortly. The UK is pretty elaborate, just like in any version of Axis and Allies. They're all over the place, so the idea here is to set up a transport shuck to feed Western Europe to help ensure that it doesn't fall, or that at least there's a good fight if it comes to that. So we're going to slowly set up our infrastructure and a steady supply of troops off of UK to Western Europe, but they have a dual responsibility, the United Kingdom does, and that is to helping prevent India from falling as well. So we're building up here, as you can see. Now the reason I put these 2 transports and the 2 subs together, there's actually a more efficient way if we wanted maximum troops to work this route, but this bomber is actually in range, so this bomber can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and land in Xinjiang for 6. So those transports are exposed, but having 2 soaks in front of it, it's actually a very small percentage chance that that bomber would be able to drill through both subs to get to the transports without being destroyed in turn. So this is the best way until I could get more assets up front, namely this British cruiser coming from the south, and eventually this Western European transport, and perhaps more from the Med. Anyway, it's just the safest way to continue that supply or protect my infrastructure. In Africa, this is sort of a way intermediary, so this fighter again projects its power all over the place, kind of like Sudan for that. Moving the armor to Congo, this whole continent is safe for the most part, so Congo can reach every territory in Africa except Morocco, which is fine because Algeria borders the same sea zone. Otherwise, we counter for every piece except for this one, but the presence of Soviet transports and paratroopers means that this Western Canada can be attacked, and I think I can leave this British infantry here without losing a tempo for him. Eventually he'll need to move east and get thrown into the rotation for troops landing in Europe and reinforcing Europe. I noticed one small mistake here. Should have at least 1 infantry down in Italy, so I'll adjust the non-combat movement. And the reason being is you always want to have at least some projection of power into adjacent territories from each of your powers, especially if you're on a Fruit Loop defense, which this certainly is. We have all kinds of colors in these territories. Great for defense, not so great for offense. This is one of the ways that you can mitigate something like that. Okay, let's go ahead and submit this turn and conduct the USA turn and pass to our opponent. One small edit before we move to the USA turn. Obviously, we could have moved that Burmese infantry to Indochina to cover that against that paratrooper, and therefore bring that Aussie fighter to India. So we went ahead and made that adjustment before submitting the final UK turn, and now we move to USA. Now USA gets a free tech roll, and we can pick any tech tree to roll that tech on, and obviously we're going to pick nuclear weapons because the next in line is ballistic missiles, which makes an anti-aircraft gun a launcher. This makes what our overall plan is with the USA much safer and easier to do, and less costly. So we will roll off on that column. So yeah, it's just USA tech roll. It's a free roll. Normally this would cost 6 to roll on the nuclear chart. Yeah, that's it. A 1 or a 2 is some kind of result, and we roll a 5, so we continue to the purchase phase. For the USA purchase, we're gonna pick up yet another spy, which brings our total count of 43 IPCs down to 33. We're then gonna purchase 3 transports, and that leaves 9 IPCs left, which we'll spend on 3 infantry. That's all spent. Now the combat move. Okay, I've got my arrows all laid out, so let's roll through this. The US Navy off Japan moves into Guam. And the US Navy off of Hawaii moves into Guam. And except for that sub's going up to Marcus Island, as well as the fighter. US Navy off the west coast is moving to Guam. 1, 2. I've yet to decide if I'm moving the carriers. The fighter goes 1, 2, yes. This bomber, 1, 2, 3. I think you can see the theme. Off in the east coast there's a fighter, or in the east US there's a fighter. He moves over to the west coast for 1, 2, 3, 4, engages in combat. This commits one of the carriers to land there. So we'll move the one off the west coast there. Why not? We'll throw in one more pip. These attack on a 1. Let's see, we got the bomber, fighter, right. Okay, so we look good here. I'll have to decide on this carrier here momentarily. I don't think there's any reason. Anyway, we'll come back to him. This bomber here, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have 2 movement left. This cruiser and sub commit. This fighter off of Iceland, 1, 2. That's 11 pips, so slightly in favor of 2 kills, but we can't be surprised if we only end up with 1. So we'll see how that goes. So that's it for combat move. The only real question is, do we want to commit this carrier to the fight? Yeah, I can't see any reason not to. Yeah. So we throw the carrier in there as well. So there's 2 carriers in there, and that's 25 or 26 pips, so more than 4 kills expected. Obviously, I'm very intent on crushing these three ships, hopefully in 1 round of combat, in the opening round. If not, then the potential for submarine escape. And that's it, these 2 naval battles. One adjustment, I canceled that second carrier going actually into the sea zone. I think we'll appreciate his flexibility if things go poorly in either of these battles out in the Pacific. Yeah. Yep. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and resolve the Guam sea zone fight first. And we have 1 attacking submarine, so we'll have to do that first. So here we go. Miss. So we'll go to general combat. So this comes out to 1 carrier, 2 cruisers, 2 fighters, 2 battleships, and a bomber. So it should still be enough to pick up 3 kills most of the time. Yeah, here we go. 3 kills just off the battleships and the bombers. The cruisers also picked up a kill. The fighters picked up a kill. So this was a little bit overkill here, but that was the idea. Okay, the Soviets roll back with 2 subs and a cruiser. We're expecting at least 1 hit, possibly 2. And they pick up the second hit there. So I have to distribute these hits. Yeah, and after much thought and deliberation, I've decided to drop both a cruiser and a submarine. I'm actually not going to allocate any of those hits to battleships at this time. And the reason being, battleships in this particular variant of Axis and Allies, they take 2 hits, but that first hit you have to pay, I believe it's 10 IPCs to repair it, and you have to be adjacent to a friendly industrial complex to do it. You have to buy it, basically, in your purchase phase. And the battleship also loses its attack value, has an attack value of 0, and it also cannot offshore. And offshore casualties actually do not get to shoot back. So offshores act a lot like submarines. So I'm kind of making this decision right now based on what I think I'm going to be doing with those battleships going forward. They have a lot higher value in this version of Axis and Allies than in really any other version. When it comes to allocating hits, you actually do have to pay a considerable cost. And given the context of what we're doing out here, I'm just going to lose a sub and a cruiser. Okay, continuing on. Let's go ahead and do the Marcus Island Sea Zone fight. This fight has a 67% chance of ending in the first round of combat, of us getting the kill between the fighter and the sub, and a 92% chance overall of being a win, including a fighter retreat if we lose the sub. Now, normally, because there's a sub, I would roll that separate, but because there's only 1 enemy unit in the sea zone, it's not necessary. We'll just roll them together, so that if the sub misses, we don't have to load up another page. So the sub missed, the fighter hits, so we will have the USSR transport roll back. Okay, it's loaded up, we roll. Transport misses. So the fact that it missed makes this an island, or a sea zone that the enemy cannot pass through. This actually creates a hostile sea zone here. Okay, that's the way it works in Classic. Okay, our final fight, the Barents Sea Sea Zone battle. We have a submarine, so of course we do that one first. USA attacks Barents Sea, round 1A, submarine surprise strike. And, yeah, we got a hit. So we'll have to submit this to our opponent and let him decide which unit gets vaporized before the battle begins. And my opponent chooses the sub, which, given the firepower that's coming, I'm not... Well, that's why we ask. Okay, let's try to sink the transport with a bomber, a fighter, and a cruiser. Cruiser, fighter, bomber. So we're looking for a 2. Miss, miss, hit. The bomber picked it up. Whew. And transport fires back. Drum roll. Oh, transport takes down a U.S. boat. Sometimes they got stingers. We'll drop a sub. Yeah, we'll drop a sub and leave this cruiser on defense. Okay. Okay, so I think I'll do an overview of my overall strategy in the next video. This is going on so long. This is just 2 parts all on the first turn, and they're both over 20 minutes, so not cool. I'll do a more in-depth analysis of that in the next video. Let's just go ahead and move to NCM and close. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. This bomber from the Battle of the Barents Sea goes to Iceland. This fighter goes down into France. No, I lied on that. That one also goes back to the Iceland. 1, 2, 3, 4. yeah. This transport picks up 2 infantry, moves to the sea zone off of Ireland and drops those 2 infantry off in France. Cruiser tags along. The infantry remaining moves to Quebec. This armor and AA gun on the East US will both go to the West US. Oh wait, before I leave this area of the map, this transport moves to the sea zone off Ireland as well. This tank goes here and then into Western Canada. This AA gun goes here, can't go any further. 2 out of the 3 infantry off the West US load onto this transport, which joins the fleet in Guam and unloads there. And this transport off of Okinawa picks up that troop, moves to Guam, and does the same thing. So there's now a total of 4 infantry on Guam. The fighter off the Marcus Island and one of the fighters off of Guam go back and land on this carrier off the Hawaiian Islands, and this transport that was off the Hawaiian Islands moves into the Midway Island sea zone, picks up the infantry, moves back and unloads into Hawaii. So we're just kind of tidying up the Pacific at this point. Something like that. Okay, the assets on the West US are all going to push into Western Canada at this point, so we already have an arrow for that. It's just click, 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 and the nuke can move 1 space a turn too, so they all move up there. Let's move this infantry from Alaska into Western Canada as well. Since we have a lot of gear there, might as well make an effort to protect it. Finally, we're going to go back to this side of the map. We're going to move 1 infantry from Italy into France, and the fighter in Italy goes to France as well. Otherwise, everybody else stays put. I lied. I'm going to move this cruiser off the south coast of Italy into the Red Sea. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to go whole hog. I'll send the transport as well, and that US fighter that went to France is going to land on that British carrier. Okay, end scene. Okay, placement. We're going to add these 3 transports to the West US. We're going to add the spy to the bottom right hand box here for spying. Go over that in a future video. And then we're going to add 1 infantry to Iceland and 2 infantry to Japan. And let's see, the last 2 NCMs I forgot, moving the bomber back from the Guam Sea Zone to Western Canada, and I diverted 1 fighter, the fighter in Guam, to Japan. Yep, so that's it. Let's collect income. We don't get 43, we're actually going to only get 41 because South Korea was not recaptured and we didn't gain any other IPCs anywhere else. So that's it. We'll catch up in the next video, review the USSR turn, and I'll go over the overall strategy. Thanks for watching this. All the best from the good captain, and